Declare the meeting open at 9:33 and start by acknowledging the Quandamooka people who are the traditional custodians of the land in which we meet here this morning. I'd also like to pay respect to the elders past and present and extend that respect to any Indigenous Australians who may be here today. A little bit of housekeeping for everyone in the gallery and for councillors. I'd like to remind you that all of these meetings are now being recorded in audio video as well as being live streamed online. Councillors are reminded that parliamentary privilege does not extend to this chamber as it does for state and federal parliamentarians, so you're reminded to be cognisant of this in your comments, which you may make through the course of this meeting. I'd also like to remind councillors to use the microphone when speaking, and for any councillors or officers who are attending virtually to please use the mute button when you are not speaking. In the event of an evacuation, I would ask that you remain calm and follow my directions. The emergency exit is through the gallery doors on your left, and please make your way down the stairwell through to the Bloomfield Street exit. Thank you. Public conduct during meetings, under section 8.4 of our standing orders, requires that all members of the public present at the meeting must, not without the prior approval of the chairperson, make any audio or video recordings or take any photographs. Remain quiet and please do not disrupt the meeting in any way. Not to bring into the meeting any signs, placards or items that may cause a hazard or interfere with other persons present. We ask that you be suitably dressed and that you turn all mobile devices to silent mode and leave the meeting to take any calls. As chairperson, it is my responsibility to warn a member of the public present at a meeting who is not complying with any of these requirements that I may, with or without such warning, require the person to leave the meeting and not return for a period such as the chairperson decides. This period may include future meetings. Okay, councillors, leave of absence is the next item on the agenda. We have some teleconferencing councillors, pardon me, by dreams. Firstly, can we have a mover and seconder, please, that Wendy Boglari is permitted to attend the meeting via teleconference? Moved Councillor Edwards, seconded Councillor Bishop. Those in favour? Those against? I'll just get a vote from those online. Councillor Tolty, Councillor Hughes.
Oh, sorry, Madam Mayor. I thought I couldn't vote till I was accepted into the meeting.
Ditto, I thought the same.
Oh, my apologies. Okay, I'll move on to the next one. You'll be able to vote. One of you will be able to vote in the next one. I'll just, those in favour? Just check that's unanimous. Thank you. And obviously 3 councillors haven't voted due to their absence in the chamber. Next item is for Councillor Tolty to be permitted to attend the meeting via teleconference. Mover and seconder, move Councillor Bishop, seconder Councillor Mackenzie. Those in favour? Those against? Councillor Boglari's voted for that. That's carried unanimously, and Councillor Tolty and Councillor Hughes were unable to vote because they're not in the chamber at this point. Councillor Hughes, I need a mover and seconder that she is permitted to attend the meeting via teleconference. A mover and seconder, thanks. Moved Councillor Edwards, seconded Councillor Bishop. Those in favour? Those against? Councillor Tolty, I'll just check that you're supporting.
Sorry, I missed, Madam Mayor. Would you prefer I speak or put my hand up on the electronic?
You can use your little hand if you like.
It's just when you go quite fast, I can't push the buttons fast enough and it looks like I'm voting against.
I will make sure.
Thank you.
You support that, I assume?
I do, yes.
That is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Just a quick reminder, as I do need reminding also, to now sign the attendance sheet on your Diligent Boards application on your computer. Thanks. This must be completed before the meeting concludes. Our devotional segment, I'd now like to invite Pastor Joss Demont, a member of the Ministers' Fellowship, who will now lead council in a brief devotional segment. Over to you, Pastor.
Thank you. Am I on? Can you hear me? I have 2 verses to share with you in 2 languages in 2 minutes. So I'll be out of here in 2 minutes. You'll be glad to hear. These verses are Philippians 4, verse 4 and 5. And I'm reading from the Passion Translation. And the heading is living in harmony with one another. Verse 4 says, be cheerful with joyous celebration in every season of life. Let joy overflow, for you are united with the Anointed One, referring to the Lord. 5, let gentleness be seen in every relationship, for our Lord is ever near. And it's this part that I want to lived out for you. Let gentleness be seen in every relationship. So, what does it mean? In language number 1, this is Aussie language. It means to disagree in an honorable way, to agree to disagree without cancelling the other person and still be friends, or at least be friendly. In language number 2, this is footy language. Don't play the man, play the ball. Or don't play the woman, play the ball. And shake hands afterwards. It's really as simple as that. That's the message that I have for you from the Lord. So let me pray for all of us. There's a verse in the Bible that this is based on. It's Philippians 2 verse 13. And the theology says to will and to want to do for his good pleasure. And this is what it means in prayer. Lord, please help us all to be willing to want to do this and to let gentleness be seen in all our relationships. Lord, please help us to do this. And Lord, please bless us when we do this. Amen. Thank you.
Councillors, just checking firstly with you, we have our next section, which is recognition of achievement. I haven't been advised of any others. So if you have one, Councillor Bishop.
I'm going to keep it as brief as the acknowledgement of the Volunteering Queensland Awards. There was cool. I just wasn't aware of the ones you might be raising, but there were some very important recognitions.
Let me start with this one, and there were some extras there.
Thanks.
If that's okay. So we have a section in our general meeting where we acknowledge people in our community who have contributed in such a way that should be acknowledged and encouraged in other people in our community. And today it's with great pleasure that I once again recognise Rob Spencer. Rob, you might just want to stand so everyone can not only see you but understand the contribution you've made not only to our city but across the southeast. Just for those of you who haven't come across Rob, we recognised him earlier this year in our Australia Day Awards as a local hero, but he's actually dedicated his time to over 30 community organisations across southeast Queensland, 10 of which are here on our Redlands coast. And just this recently, I think last weekend, what day was it, Rob, that you were recognised at the Volunteer Queensland Annual Awards? It was Monday. He was actually awarded the Lifetime Contribution Award at the Volunteer Queensland Awards, as I just stated, and the recipient earlier this year, as I said, from Redland City Council for the Local Hero Award. Now, talk about a lifetime contribution. It would actually take me a lifetime to read all of the things that he has done in his short life. But if I could just raise a few that are really important to our community here in Redlands, and I'll start with Star. Obviously, Rob Spencer, I can remember the meetings when we knew that policy was changing at federal government level and how important it was for us to have a local service for our ageing population. And out of that discussion, and with the commitment and dedication of a number of people led by Rob, we now have Star, who transports people, takes care of people's properties in our ageing sector of our community. He also works very much with our disability network. He's volunteered for Volunteer Marines, VMR, for Older People Speak Out. He's worked in the mental health space in a voluntary capacity, and also with our aged care providers. So, like I said, he has a much longer list than what I will talk about today, but I just wanted, on behalf of Redlands Coast, to thank Rob and acknowledge his more broadly acknowledged award this week on Monday from Volunteer Queensland. And with that, we just wanted to thank you for making our community a better place. We don't mind sharing you with Logan and Ipswich, but we know that this is your home. But we have a small gift, and just to recognise once again and encourage other people who will get the gift of giving, as Rob has done for many years. So thank you so much, Rob.
say thank you. I would like to feel that this is an honour for all of Redlands. Redlands, we're a small group. We're surrounded by very big neighbours. I believe it's good that Redlands gets these sorts of accolades, and I'd like to thank all of Redlands for sort of sharing with me the journey, which has been really, really good. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Rob. All right, now I know there's a couple of other recognitions. I might just... Councillor Bishop, was there anything further to that one? Or
Look, I'll defer to you because I think it's best it comes from the organisation. So thanks.
Okay, thank you, councillors. It's been a bit of a slapdash kind of week getting to this point, so I apologise that we haven't been able to have those conversations before today. All right. Councillors, the next item is receipt and confirmation of the minutes. If I may get a mover and seconder that the meetings of the general meeting held on the minutes of the general meeting held on 19th of April be confirmed.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Yes, Councillor.
My sincere apologies. I thought we were still on the recognition, and I thought Councillor Bishop had another recognition, but I really would like to acknowledge the loss of Paul Stanley.
Okay, Councillor Hughes, I'm just condolences are... Yeah, okay. So normally
is further up in the agenda.
I'll allow it now, Councillor Hughes. No, it's actually earlier. It's after our devotional segment. Would you like to speak now?
Yes, well, that's what I thought. We were still on that section. I'm so sorry. It is difficult when you're online, and I thought that's what Councillor Bishop was doing.
Councillor Hughes, if I may just finish off the item that we were on, which is the minutes of the meeting, and then I'll come back to you with the indulgence of the chamber, if that's okay, councillors. Just get a nod. So we just have a mover and seconder for the general meeting minutes to be confirmed for the 19th of April. It was moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Bishop. Any items of correctness? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Okay, Councillor Hughes, with Chamber's indulgence, I'll allow you to present your condolences for Paul Stanley.
Sincere apologies that I wasn't quick enough on the my hand up. I would just like to acknowledge the recent loss of Paul Stanley, who was obviously the father of Matthew Stanley, who we sadly and tragically lost to a one punch. Matthew was a student at Redlands College some years ago, and Paul, his dad, spearheaded the One Punch Can Kill campaign across our state and broader and wider. And Paul worked tirelessly for our community. And I wanted to say sincere condolences to Paul's family, and on behalf of our city, to thank Paul again for all that he has done for the community. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Hughes. I've just been advised that we're still having some technical issues with our online streaming. So, councillors, I'm going to ask for a motion, a procedural motion, to adjourn the meeting for a short period of time. If I could just maybe suggest until we have online streaming up and operational. Moved Councillor Bishop. We don't need a seconder for that. It's a procedural motion. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Councillor Hughes? That's carried unanimously. I apologise to those in the gallery, but we have a commitment to be streamed online live. And so we want to meet that commitment, but make sure our technology is adequate. So please speak amongst yourselves. Thank you so much for dealing with our chaos. All right, have I got everyone in the room? So with that, I'll ask for a procedural motion once again to resume the meeting. Move Councillor Edwards. Those in favour? Councillor Tolte? That's carried unanimously.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, take two. Public participation. I will just have to read you some of the guidelines that involves public participation. So if you don't mind, Ms Mandeville, I'll just do that while you're getting yourself organised. You may have noticed there is some signage around chambers regarding public participation at meetings. It's our usual practice to require any person wishing to address the meeting to state their name and suburb or the organisation that they represent and the subject that they wish to speak about. The information is recorded, hopefully, today in the minutes of the meeting, which is a public document available for inspection at Council's Administration Building and published on Council's website. And obviously this meeting, as much as we have had some challenges today, is being recorded in audio, video, and by speaking you acknowledge that and agree that you will be placed in the public domain with your presentation today. Any person addressing Council at this meeting will state their name and suburb, organisation they represent, subject they wish to speak about. We ask them to stand unless they are unable to do so, to act and speak with decorum, be respectful and courteous, make no comments directed at any individual Council, Council employee, councillor or member of the public, ensuring that all comments relate to Council as a whole. I have some responsibilities as chairperson, which is to consider each application on its merits and consider any relevant matter in making my decision to allow or disallow a person to address the local government. Only those members of the public who have an approved application are able to do so. Details on how to apply is on our website. I also have the responsibility of determining the number of speakers based on the number of persons wanting to speak. Each speaker has a maximum of 5 minutes, depending on the number of speakers. I also have the responsibility, if necessary, to withdraw the approval to address Council before that time period has elapsed. Just a quick reminder for all those speaking today that debate or discussion cannot be entered into at this time. So with that, I will now ask Ms Mandeville on my page to begin. Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Susie Mandeville. I'm a resident of Cuchumudlo Island and I'm a member of the group that opposes the removal of the small vessels and kayak racks from the beaches of Cuchumudlo. I'd like to start by asking a question which you probably won't answer, and that is, why have Council officers demanded the removal of the kayak racks and the small vessels from the main beach? Why? The boats have been there for years and the rack was installed by Council in 2018. We wondered if there'd been a complaint. The reason for my question is that we have 850 residents on Cuchi, according to the Bureau of Statistics 2021, and 1 or 2 residents complaining should not result in the removal of popular facilities that promote healthy, active recreation. And I should like to comment in particular sections of the Council notice and letter to residents. Council investigations have determined that these vessels are taking up over 60 metres of the main beach foreshore, contributing to adverse foreshore erosion and impacting dune vegetation. Our community would like to know what Council investigations have been carried out, because that assertion is patently untrue. There is still grass and bush growing amongst the boats that are lying on the edge of the beach and foreshore, mere metres above the high tide line, and approximately 30 metres of emerald fringe lie behind them. Currently their position means that they do not damage the emerald fringe when being taken out to launch, and I would counter suggest that not only have the boat owners taken good care to avoid their doing damage, but those boats may have even stabilised the foreshore by forming an embankment. Your second point, as the vessel storage racks no longer support the current storage problem, you're removing them. You've identified this as a problem because they're being overused, and I submit that that is right in line with you saying too many people are driving cars, let's get rid of the roads. What is actually needed is a recognition of how popular that facility is and how unpopular the Council decision is to threaten boat, kayak and dragon boat users. It amounts to get your craft off the foreshore or we're going to confiscate it. Council thanks you for your support is your next point. of this initiative and for helping ensure we continue to leave beautiful Cuchimudlo Island as we found it. Well, I would question, what year does that statement reflect? Was it when Matthew Flinders found Cuchimudlo, or when it was first surveyed, or when it was used for farming? I mean, how far are we going back? The car park is in the Emerald Fringe Zone, so are the toilets, playground, picnic tables and shelters. So how much are you going to rip up to restore it to the condition called as we found it? And it says, Council thanks you for your support. Have you had any support? I'm aware of a petition lodged signed by over 702 people that did not give their support, who actively engaged in robust discussion that centred around the disgust that they have for RCC taking high-handed decisions regarding works on Cuchimudlo Island without any consultation with residents. Which brings me to my next point, which is Council's own SCMP shoreline erosion management plan that started back in 2017. Well, this group has apparently disappeared. It seems to have had some discussions, and the upshot was that the community involvement should be sought as they are the principal stakeholders. But searching the council website, I can find no further reference to actions or follow-up. And our argument as Coochies is in favour of retaining the kayak racks and the area for small vessels, because their removal will adversely impact the health and recreation of islanders. We do not have sufficient facilities for our youth or age to exercise their mental and physical well-being. If tenders are no longer allowed on the foreshore, well, where should they be stored? And if we all buy trailers, where will we park them? There are only 9 legal boat trailing parking spaces, and once a week most of them are taken up by council vehicles waiting for the barge. On weekends and holidays, these spaces are overflowing. You would need another 20 or so trailer spaces. And until now, our youth could walk down to the kayak racks, launch their craft, enjoy a few hours with their mates out on the water, quietly doing no harm. Now they've got to wait until a parent can come home and drive a car and take them down. And how will they get back? You can't take a phone out on the in case you tip over. Now, I do have a solution. Do you want me to carry on and give you the solution?
You have 1 more minute.
Right, this is what we want, that you meet with the islanders, fulfilling your obligation in the SEMP agenda, and discuss upgrading and increasing the facility, regulate it and improve it. My personal suggestion is there is a broken ramp up at Morwong Beach. Place 2 kayak storage racks up there nearby that. That reduces the impact on Main Beach. Also, it's more convenient for the people who live at the north end. And solution 2, Norfolk Beach has a car park where there is room for low impact storage for small craft, another couple of kayak racks. So distribute it around the island, not remove it. We need it, we use it, and we are very disappointed that it's being removed without consultation. This is not an expensive fix. We believe that islanders pay about 1.8 million in rates, so we're not asking for much in return, and it is with hope and optimism that islanders expect their council to enact the wishes of islanders. Thank you very much. And just in finishing, I've got 6 of these, so if you wasn't being recorded, you won't miss out.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Ms. Mandeville.
Now, who do you want me to give these to?
If you just give it to Tony in the back.
Just going to give this one to Councillor Hewlett as my councillor.
Tony Bain in the corner there will take the others. Thank you very much. On the same topic, we have Mr. Casey Springfellow. He's not here? I heard that,
Excuse
yeah.
me, Madam Mayor. He said that he sent me a text and said he won't be able to make it today.
Oh, okay. All right, in which case we now have Mr. Paul Thomas regarding a petition to council seeking the tree removal in Sea Holly Crescent Walkway. Mr. Thomas?
My name's Paul Thomas. I live at Victoria Point, and I've pre-recorded a statement to council. My name is Paul Thomas. I've lived at Kintyre Street, Victoria Point since 1999, and the back of my property borders the Sea Holly Crescent Park and Walkway. Council contacted me after acquiring Lot 45 Sea Holly Crescent from the developer for use as part of the park and walkway from Sea Holly Crescent to Point O'Halloran Road. After many conversations and meetings on site with council officers and other neighbours at the time, it was agreed that the third version of the council's landscape plan for the park would be implemented. It was to provide a 2-metre buffer zone to the bordering residents with gardens containing low spiky shrubs and bushes approximately 2 to 3 metres high, and shade trees along both sides of the walkway approximately 5 to 6 metres high. The landscape plan for the park was not followed, and large trees were planted in the garden beds a metre from the bordering fences. In the past, I've had 2 of these trees removed by council when they grew over 5 metres high and large surface roots came under my fence and into my property. Council officers now refuse to remove these trees, even though another tree on my fence line was recently infested with white ants, which council initially refused to treat after the termites had damaged my fence, retaining wall, and the interior of a bedroom at the back of my home. It wasn't until the tree fell over and destroyed my back fence in a storm that council had it removed. A professional pest controller had determined that the termites had come from 3 nests found in trees in the park, as there were no nests found on my property. 2 of the large trees along the walkway have fallen over in past storms, and another has died before being removed by council. Some of the remaining trees are now over 15 metres high and leaning towards my neighbour and my home. With storms of ever-increasing frequency and strength, my neighbour and I fear these trees could fall on our homes because of their height, close proximity to our homes, and the prevailing winds in the area. Myself and other neighbouring residents have also asked council the council place a barrier at the Sea Holly Crescent entrance of the park and walkway to prevent motorcycles using the walkway as a shortcut in the future. But council officers have told us council are removing these types of barriers on other walkways and would not be installing them in future. I am therefore asking council to remove or reduce the height of these trees and maintain them so they don't pose a constant threat to our homes, as well as and well-being in severe storms. Also, that council place a barrier at the entrance of the park at the Sea Holly Crescent end. I am a co-principal petitioner to the petition submitted to council via Councillor Hewlett, which is being raised in council meeting today. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Thomas. On the same topic, I believe we also have Mr. John Macaulay, also resident of Victoria Point. Are you okay to stand, Mr. Macaulay? You're fine?
I got it. Thought we had a fault there for a minute. I'm John Macaulay. I live at Sea Holly Crescent, and as with Paul, I've recorded a section to read to you guys here today. I'm 78 years old and I'm past the public speaking age, I think.
You're doing a fine job, Mr. Macaulay. But if I may, councillors, I will probably need an extension of time. for another 5 minutes. So I can move and second that we have another 5 minutes of public participation. Moved Councillor Edwards, seconded Councillor Bishop. Those in favour? Councillor Hughes. Councillor Hughes. Thank you. That's carried unanimously. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you off your game at all, but I just wanted to make sure that we had the right amount of time for your recording to be played. So if you're happy for us to play that now?
Yes, thank you.
No problems. Here we go.
Okay. Good morning, councillors. My name is John McCauley. I'm a resident of Sea Holly Crescent, Victoria Point. My residence adjoins what's known as Sea Holly Walkthrough. This walkthrough is also a park with numerous trees. At the time of my moving into my home, the trees in the park were approximately 4 metres in height, and photographs of the time can confirm this. At the time, good maintenance was practised by council with all edges trimmed and parks lawn surfaces maintained to a high standard. Several trees were positioned close to the park boundaries, some with roots eventually causing damage to adjacent properties, including my concrete pool surrounds. Council arborists have to date refused to address this problem, that is, the root problem. Main trees are brush box and water housia. The tree of most concern to me is a brush box approximately 18 metres high, diameter 0.4 metres at waist height, and which splits to 3 main trunks at a height of 3 metres, giving the tree a tall, narrow profile with most of its foliage close to the top. I believe this would increase its wind loading factor. The base of the tree is located only 6 metres from my home, with a lean of approximately 12 degrees towards my home, and is growing in a soil depression which is always subject to ponding, which means holding water after rain for several days. The resultant muddy red residue is often cleaned out by my neighbour, as it often covers the concrete walkway which runs adjacent to the tree base and is quite slippery. The soil in this general area has been tested and classified as being highly reactive. In this type of soil, builders are required to use the extra foundations to cope with soil movements. It is reasonable to assume, therefore, that the obvious above-ground surface roots would have lessened purchase in soil which are highly reactive. These roots are quite prominent on the surface adjacent to the tree and are often hit by contractors' mowers. It seems likely to me that the tree has little or no taproots. Inspector arborists have made no comment in regard to these roots. The height given by council numbering risk systems is 14 metres. My figure is 18 metres, and this means a fall zone of some 36 metres diameter, which would cover the concrete walkway and indeed part of the adjacent public footpath, as well as a large area of my house. It is my belief that any one of the tree's 3 trunks would be sufficient to impart serious impact damage to my home. Any persons using the walkway at this time would of course be at risk of injury or worse. It seems likely that none of the council arborists who inspected the tree, 3 of them, were taking into account the factual details I've just mentioned. One arborist said, in regard to the soil type affecting wet stability, that in reactive soils roots go deeper, ignoring the fact that they would be anchored in mud. All seemed only interested in the tree's health. I pointed out that common sense dictates that green, healthy trees are normally much heavier than dead or dry trees and have much more foliage to increase wind pressure. In my 37 years service, which what is now Queensland Fire and Rescue, I have attended many trees down incidents and have always been amazed at the most unbelievable damage which innocent and healthy looking trees can impart. 3 of this healthy looking tree have fallen over in this park. Having been often exposed to the homeowner's grief, I try to make it less likely to happen to me. I sincerely believe that in ever increasing periods of bad weather, with often high winds, the risk of damage by this tree and probably others in the park is considerable. Trees continue to grow upwards even as we speak. I cannot sleep during these periods and spend the time alone listening to the wind, dreading a tree through my roof at any time. My GP has kindly provided a supporting letter which details his concern about the effect of this tree problem on my mental health, copy of which has been provided to Councillor Hewlett for inclusion in Business Today. Ladies and gentlemen, I feel that after national service in the Army and 37 years in Queensland Fire and Rescue, I've done my best to protect your home and families. Please help me to protect mine. I am a co-principal petitioner to the petition submitted to Council via Councillor Hewlett, which is being raised in Council's meeting today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCauley. You did a very fine job. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, councillors.
All right. There are no further speakers as I understand. So if I may now have a mover and seconder that we resume our meeting proceedings. Moved, Councillor Edwards. Seconded, Councillor Mitchell. Those in favour? Councillor Boglari? Those against? There are none. That's unanimous. Thank you. Look, just in order to make sure that our staff are comfortable, I think, Jason, if Tony or Andrew could perhaps move a table for Jason, because he could be here for hours. Now that I've said that, it'll be a quick meeting, I'm hoping, but just for your comfort, because it's not going to be, you're not going to be able to work in those conditions. So while that's happening, we'll get on with the meeting. I apologise. I just thought we'd make sure we've got something in place for him. Councillors, so next on our agenda is the presentation of these petitions, and if I may, our first petition, Councillor Hewlett, I believe, is the request to stop the removal of small craft kayaks and storage racks from Coochie-Mudlow Island. Over to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a petition from the residents requesting that council stop the removal of small craft kayaks and storage racks from Coochie-Mudlow Island. Many locals of Coochie-Mudlow Island have kayaks stored on the kayak racks or main beach. Members of the community also participate in healthy outdoor activities such as team paddling in outrigger canoes. In March, the Redland City Council put up signs at the kayak rack on Main Beach and the outrigger storage space on Norfolk Beach stating owners of vessels have until April 30 to remove them, or they will either be dumped or impounded and there would be a retrieval fee. Some time ago, Redland City Council installed the racks on Main Beach and it also encouraged the activities of the outrigger teams as it is a healthy outdoor exercise that connects community members. The kayak racks were installed so people could store their kayaks safely and have easy access to the beach and water, again a healthy outdoor activity. Redland City Council put up signs to remove the racks without any consultation with the Coochie-Mudlow Island community. We, the signatories, ask that Redland City Council show us a clear transparent process that has led to the decision being made, and let us know why there was no consultation. We request the racks be left where they are and the outrigger teams be able to keep the canoes in the same spot on Norfolk Beach. I move the petition is of operational nature and be received and referred to the Chief Executive Officer for consideration. Thank you.
Moved Councillor Hewlett, seconded Councillor Bishop. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. The next petition, Councillor Hewlett.
Thank you again, Madam Mayor. I have a petition from the residents requesting tree removal in Sea Holly Crescent Walkway, Victoria Point. We, the undersigned residents living in close proximity to the Point O'Halloran Road to Sea Holly Crescent Walkway Park in Victoria Point, respectfully wish to petition the Redland City Council for the removal of large trees in the park. 3 trees have already fallen over during storms and 2 have been removed. There is already damage to bordering fence and homes due to termite nests found in the trees in the park. The height of the trees on one bordering home blocks the sun on solar panels in winter. The height and proximity of the trees to bordering residents presents a danger to the public and children gaining illegal access to the pool and for the property of the park, from the park. I propose that this petition is of operational nature and be received and referred to the Chief Executive Officer for consideration. Thank you.
Moved Councillor Hewlett, seconded Councillor Edwards. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Next item is order of business. Haven't been advised. Pardon? Haven't been advised of any presentation. So order of business. I haven't been advised of any motion to alter the order of business, so we'll go straight to our reports. And the first one is 13.1, moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Mackenzie. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Edwards?
Just quickly, we're getting towards the pointy end of the year, but these are the April's figures. I've just got a question to go to the CFO or another officer. The refuse collection rate charge is $289,000 behind budget forecast. What would be the drivers behind this?
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. CFO?
Good morning, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much, and thank you, Councillor Edwards, for the opportunity to talk to this. This is on page 5 of the report, page 5 of 14, and yes, the household collection, so the curbside collection is behind. I've looked at the numbers, and there's nothing that's jumping out. So in terms of we levy the rates every quarter. We pay JJ Richards by the lift, so it might be in terms of the number of lifts is moving a wee bit. We have got another couple of months to go, so I expect it to be in the ballpark. I'm mindful that on a base of 33 million, it's about 1%, so it's a lot of money in dollar terms, but in terms of a variance analysis, it's what we would say is immaterial. So there's nothing, and thank you for letting me have a look beforehand, there's nothing in the ledgers to suggest it's not growth, because we've had months where it's been overs and unders, so it's just in the ballpark. Thank you, Councillor.
Anything further, Councillor Woods? Speaker against? Question, Councillor Bishop?
Yeah, thank you very much. I was born in the month of September, which means I'm a Virgo, and I don't bring this out very often. But looking specifically at page 36, which is 9 of 14 in the report, when we get to the capital works expenditure, when I look at the line that says the bar graph on the right-hand side, which says that we've spent 55,803, it reflects on the chart as though we're actually at 60.
So your question is, does that line up with the text?
Yeah, does it line up? Do we need to just adjust the graphics? It's just a graphics question, just aligning that. That's a very pedantic point that's atypical for me.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Bishop, for the opportunity. Yeah, I think the scale on the left-hand side is a wee bit small, so we'll certainly bear that in mind next time we present the graph, I think, because we're trying to capture the whole year of the budget. But yes, the graph is correct. Thank you. The number's correct.
Thanks, CFO. If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Excuse me, Mayor, I had a question.
My apologies, Councillor Hughes. Your question?
Thank you. I have 2 questions. I hope you can hear me correctly. To our CFO, through you, Mayor, on page 4 of 14, looking at our capital revenue, grants, subsidies and contributions, I note that there's about $14.3 million there that we're looking at behind our projections. That's a high number. I'm questioning that one. Thank you.
CFO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, thank you, Councillor Hughes, for your question. Yes, on page 414, the capital revenue, so that is infrastructure charges, capital grants, capital subsidies and capital contributions is behind it. It's a timing issue if history repeats itself. So in terms of this time last year, we were a wee bit ahead. We had $15 million as actuals, and if memory serves me correct, we came in at the end of last year in excess of $40 million spread over those two lines for capital revenue. So very much a timing thing. We do often see a little uplift towards the end, like we see with capital expenditure. The capital revenue mirrors that, so I am expecting something in the ballpark of what we've got budgeted there, $40 million by the end of the year. Thanks, Councillor Hughes.
And thank you, Deborah. While you're at the microphone, if you just flip forward, please, to page 6 of 14, where we talk about our current assets and our current liabilities. We've got a trade and other receivables at 92, coming down, sorry, obviously millions, coming down to current liabilities, where we look at our trade and other payables at 37.666. There's a really significant difference there.
It's always important to remember these are monthly reports, but I'll hand back to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Hughes, for the opportunity. Yeah, so I think the question is in terms of the receivables, which is money owed to council, compared to payables, which is money that council owes its creditors. You'll notice that receivables is higher than budgeted. That's because April we levied the rates and we defer some of the revenue, and that's an opportunity where we've got more information now in actual terms than what we had when we phased our budget. The one that's more interesting, I think, from your perspective, councillors, is the payables, and you'll see that we are $15 million under our budget. That's a combination of two things. One is that we fully subscribe to local buy, and because we know most of our creditors are local firms, we ensure that we pay promptly. Our payment terms are 30 days. And I can reassure all of you that we do not make it to 30 days. We often pay within 7 days. We are very prompt at payment because we're so mindful that they're local creditors. And of course, we're tracking under a wee bit. So when we're under, we don't owe as much money. But that's the summary there. So good news for the residents of Redland City, Madam Mayor and Councillor Hughes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deborah.
For those, and correct me if I'm wrong, CFO, but if I recall when I first got elected, we had 90-day terms for payables. So over time, we've actually really tried to support our local businesses. So, you know, I think that's a reflection of how important we believe our business community is to our city. Thank you. Sorry, there was no further. Sorry about that. Councillor Boglara, you have a question as well?
No, sorry, it just takes about 3 clicks to get my hand up, so I was trying to be efficient.
I'm seeing your support now, so that's good. Thank you. Those in favour again, thanks, councillors. I think we almost took that vote before. That's unanimous. Councillor Tolte? Yes, thank you. 13.2, mover and seconder for our revenue policy, investment policy, etc. Councillor Mitchell is moving that. Seconder, Councillor Mackenzie. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Mitchell?
Yeah, just very briefly, Madam Mayor, this is the public quite rightly want to know why council do certain things and how we function, and I just don't want these policies to go through without noting in the public how important they are. They're reviewed every year as part of the financial strategy and budget preparation. Certainly not going to go through the detail behind each policy, but this is really important part of the business as usual of council, and we just encourage our residents to have a look at any of those that interest them. But it is a really important body of work, and just didn't want it to go past with just a tick and flick without noting that. Thank you.
Any speakers against? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? There are none. Councillor Hewlett isn't in the room. Other than that, it's unanimous. Next item is 13.3, the Audit Office Interim Management Report. Mover and seconder, thanks. Councillor Bishop's moving that. Seconded. Councillor Mackenzie, would you like to speak to it, Councillor Bishop?
Only to acknowledge that the officers are managing the items that have been identified, and I believe that's all in order, so thank you.
Any speakers against? Councillor Hughes?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question, and that is with regard to the report, the status of issues, and we have 3 deficiencies that have been identified. But of the first deficiency, my question regarding the timing of asset capture, the original action date was August 2021, and it has been moved up now to June 24. So that's a big gap, and I'd like to understand why that gap is to close out this deficiency. Thank you.
CFO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, thank you, Councillor Hughes. Just to be 100% clear, these are prior year deficiencies. So
correct.
This year it was a clean interim audit. I don't want
the
opportunity to pass to note that. In terms of prior year, this is a very complex topic, Councillor Hughes, and it's regarding the timing and clearance of asset capture, which starts with the capital program, and a very large capital program. And what we asked for, there's some explanation in the report. They're called ASCONs, as constructed diagrams. And because legislation changed over the last few years, we have some agreements where we can't insist on a certain type of drawing, and a lot of those contracts are still flowing through because a lot of multi-year works. And we've introduced a new methodology now. So since we got the action item back in 2021, we've made loads of progress, you'll be pleased to know. And the auditors came out last year, and the auditors acknowledged that the process has changed in the PDG, so that's in infrastructure and operations. There's been process improvements, and we're actually what we call drip feeding through to the spatial capture team and the asset accountants in a much more timely fashion. So we've made great progress there. What we're now looking to do is help the auditors close it out, and we're not one to tick and flick, as you know, that's not my style, so we want to do it once and do it well. And we spoke to the auditors at this interim audit to say we've still got a bit of work to do, and if anyone is interested, we have a job on the board right now in the finance area for a spatial capture person, and that resource will help us catch up with the backlog. So it's a very complex topic. It starts with infrastructure agreements, working with developers when projects are finished, closing out the project paperwork, and then passing it away from the infrastructure and operations team to the finance team. So we're looking at, over the last few years, we've had COVID challenges, as you know, supply chain issues, struggles with resourcing, and we've gotten out to market to get another spatial capture person. So I'm very confident we will close this out before 30 June 2024. We might even see some movement this year. So that's an update for you. It is a little complex topic, Councillor Hughes.
Thank you so much, Deborah. Deeply appreciated. Ta.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 13.4, Councillor Tolty, you put your hand up. You would like to move that? Seconded, Councillor Mackenzie.
Yes, I would.
Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Tolty?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So item 13.4 is a small change proposed to the subordinate local law number 2, animal management. This can be boiled down to a really simple assessment. We simply have residents increasingly living on dual family living arrangements within the Redlands on large acreage, and we are unable under the current local law to offer the flexibility required for assessment of 2 homes on 1 lot for their pets. We allow people in mobile home parks to be individually permitted to register their little dogs in multiple dwelling situations on shared lots, but not private homeowners where we have 2 homes on 1 lot. This change currently will apply to very few, I believe it's only 19 properties And not all of those will want to take up the option. Not all of them will want to have more pets. But at the moment, I would suggest that they do have the pets, and we are making them criminals in their own backyard by not allowing them to be registered. We are spending an inordinate amount of time on what should be a simple, fair adjustment to the local law to allow families in dual living situations to be assessed for this purpose, as 2 homes rather than 1 property. It is that simple. Councillors, if you view the consultation report and assess the submissions, removing the submissions made from outside of the city and those from people living in urban areas that will be completely unaffected by the proposed change, the submissions can be characterised as simply 57 in support and 39 against. This is a fair, simple, risk-free change which should be supported, which when approved would apply to around 20 properties. The consultation data shows over 1,400 people engaged with the proposal information, the majority of whom chose not to proceed to make a submission. This indicated that around 1,000 of those people interested enough to be informed on the change were happy to allow it and did not feel the need to object. Of those who objected, they were overwhelmingly concerned about wildlife impacts. As is noted in the report, this change affects a small number of properties and is likely not an increase in dogs, but a recognition dogs already in place should be permitted and registered. Dogs are required to be denned and managed, and that doesn't change. There is no increase in the threat to wildlife realistically reflected in these changes. So I would ask all councillors to put this to bed and simply support our acreage families living in dual homes to have their pets. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Tolty. Speaker against, is that Councillor Hughes?
Thank you, Mayor. I just, in speaking against Councillor, pardon me, taking a breath, Councillor Tolty, I just mentioned 19 properties and 20 properties, but in the report it mentions 61 properties. So I'm feeling that the numbers are a little higher than what Councillor Tolty has just reported, and I feel that the impact may be more than what Councillor Tolty has just reported. Thank you. So potentially, could we have some clarity on the number of properties? The report here says on page, I'll just get the page 78, it says of which 61 properties currently meet the criteria.
Sorry, I might just get Graham to respond. Thanks.
Good morning, councillors, and thanks for the opportunity to answer some questions. So just to clarify, our, number crunching around the data suggests there's 61 properties which are eligible. That means they're over 10,000 square metres and they've got current approvals for more than 1 house on those properties. From what I'm understanding Councillor Tolty to be saying is that of those 61 properties, there's already 40 odd which have dogs registered, so that might mean there's another 19 which don't have dogs registered. So that's my understanding what Councillor Tolty was trying to say there.
Thank you, Graham.
Yep.
Thank you. Anything further, Councillor Hughes, pardon me?
Not at this point, thank you, Mayor.
So that was speaking against. Any other speakers for? There being none, I'd ask Councillor Tolty if she'd like to sum up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Well, no one indicated a question until I asked. No, because we haven't got another speaker for standing orders, councillors. You have a question, make sure it's a question, please, if you want to have a question. Councillor Bishop.
Yeah, will this new proposed local law require those seeking permission for a 4th dog to have a permit?
So the local law amendment is that for those properties that would be eligible, they need to register the dog. So it's not a permit as such; it's a registration of those dogs.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's all in the report. Councillor Berridge, question.
Through you, Madam Chair, can I ask Councillor Tracy Hughes if she was speaking against, or was she asking a question?
Thank you. She was
speaking. I heard a question, not speaking against.
She said, if her words, if I recollect, said in speaking
those
against.
Were her words.
Councillor
But was she speaking against?
Councillor Berridge. She said, in speaking against, I'd like to ask a question about the figures. So she was speaking against. Thank you. Councillor Tolte, would you like to sum up? Thanks.
That was clever.
It wasn't my choice. And Councillor Hughes decided to use her time to speak against it by asking a question. Thank you. Councillor Tolte, would you like to sum up?
I would. Thank you, Madam Mayor. But this change, because of the size of the properties, doesn't reflect across the city equally. There are areas that are predominantly urban areas that may have one or two properties. The majority of the properties are in Sheldon, Mount Cotton, Redland Bay, some in Alexandra Hills. And I truly believe this will make negligible difference. Number of dogs. Can you still hear me? I'm sorry, I've got a call coming.
Yes, no, we can hear you.
Oh, sorry about that. So it's my belief that this is completely without risk, and all it will do is mean when the officers go out to assess property for the number of dogs that they can register, rather than assessing the property based on the electricity connection, which is what they do now, they will be able to do it based on the approved dwellings on the property. Thank you.
With that, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? That is lost. Just those in favour? Councillor Mitchell, Councillor Edwards, Councillor McKenzie, Councillor Tolte, Councillor Williams. Those against? Councillor Golay, Councillor Hewlett, Councillor Tolte, you need to put your hand down. Councillor Boglari, Councillor Hughes, Councillor Berridge, Councillor Bishop.
I'm really disappointed in that. Thank you.
Moving on, I think that leaves that. We don't need a further decision on that because that was a change proposed to an existing local law, correct?
Yep, so that the alternative recommendation was option 2, which is not to proceed with amending the local law.
Right. Do we require a motion? Because I think that was, because we actually didn't support the change of the law. Thank you.
Yep.
Moving on to, no, we don't. Item 15.1, mover and seconder, thanks. Are you all with us, councillors?
Am I able to move an alternate motion, please?
Your motion, councillor?
That the application be refused on proper legal planning grounds.
Okay, councillor is moving a refusal of the officer's recommendation, and we'll need a seconder for that. Councillor Bishop seconded that. You'd like to speak to it, Councillor Golay?
I was happy to second, thank you.
I've got a seconder, thanks.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Councillors, I've received dozens of submissions in relation to this particular property. So to represent those people who have lodged those submissions in support of a refusal, this is why I've brought this alternate motion. So basically the character and the density of the proposed reconfiguration is not consistent with the density and character of the surrounding neighbourhood and does not retain a semi-rural bushland character, providing a transition between urban and rural land uses as anticipated by LDR2 Park Residential Precinct and the Low Density Residential Zone Code. The proposed development is contrary to the city plan provisions, which is A, Low Density Residential Zone Code, overall outcome 3 Bravo India 4 and performance outcome P020. Bravo, reconfiguring a lot code overall outcome 2 alpha I and performance outcome P01. The residential interface with community facility zone land. The proposed reconfiguration does not integrate with the surrounding locality and will result in a non-functional neighbourhood by virtue of increasing the number of residential lots in proximity to incompatible land uses on the adjacent community facilities land, zoned land. So it's community facilities zoned land. In particular, noise and other impacts from the existing place of worship and educational establishments located on the adjoining lots has not been appropriately managed. The proposed development is contrary to the city plan provisions. You can see those provisions there, Alpha and Bravo. One of the primary really important situations there is the flood impact. I would suggest that whilst the developer has lodged a hydrology report as such, I'm really suggesting that we need a council-based report on the impacts of flooding in that area, given the amount of flooding that's happening to local properties there presently. And I believe that further upstream modifications to land will only exacerbate the properties that are downstream in that flood area. So the proposed reconfiguration has not minimised earthworks within flood-prone land, resulting in an increase of adverse impact of drainage and flood inundation on other properties affected by the hazard. The proposed development is contrary to the city plan's provisions. You can see that alpha through delta. Councillors, LDR2 as a 6,000 square metre lot, that particular parcel of land is sandwiched in between two primary community-based facilities. One is a church that houses a food bank, a youth centre, and holds various markets, stalls, Christmas carols, etc. It's quite well utilised. And then secondly is Faith Lutheran College. Faith Lutheran College is expanding as well, and both of those facilities would see an increase not only in noise but pedestrian use. That parcel of land, realistically, in my view, needs to stay as it is. Yes, I get it. Any person can make an application to subdivide. I don't think it's an appropriate use of the land there. Neither does the community who have written in, and that's from right across the city. Primarily right across the city because they're all the patrons of the church and the school who are voicing their opinions in relation to this. I really feel strongly that it needs to be another hydrology report. There has been suggestions that the noise report was taken on a Sunday mid-afternoon when the church was not in use and neither was the school, so there was not an accurate reading of noise impacts that will impact possible buyers of that land. So we're talking about, let's say the land goes ahead, it gets developed, and you've got your 6 blocks there. There's already noise complaints being put forward now from existing residents who have moved next door to the church and the school. So
just
the existing
giving a heads
property,
up about timing, Councillor.
Yep,
5 minutes
thanks, Madam
almost.
Chair. So the existing property that's on that land is currently being rented out, and those tenants are lodging complaints to the church and to the school about noise. So now we're going to exacerbate that by 6 if we approve this, not to mention the flooding impacts, etc. And I really don't think, and I agree with the community on this is not the place to chop this particular land up. It needs to be kept there, so possibly for future community use, which is and the facilitation of the expansion of the school, if not that church ground. The school's expanding, and we need more education in the Redlands, so that school needs that room to move as well. So I'm proposing that we refuse this application on those legal grounds presented. Thank you.
Speaker against, councillors. Councillor Hewlett speaking against.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I look at this application, I think it is an extremely good approval from the council officers. It's largely, every lot is over 800 lots, square metres or larger. The existing surrounding properties are all medium density or small 400 square metre lots or townhouses or units. So to say that the church isn't already impacting other areas, this is going to make a difference, I highly doubt it. The other thing I like about this proposal is that there is the blocks are going to be off the main road, so you're not going to get street parking for those households. They'll be driving down an easement to park at the houses. And history will tell you that visitors to those properties will also drive down that easement to visit those people. So you won't have unnecessary car parking on the street. On planning grounds alone, the officers have come forward with an approval. I'm really concerned if this went to court of council's chances of winning this. I've got to take into account, you've got to take in legislative commitments, and I just don't believe that council would have a leg to stand on in this against, in the P&A court, PD, sorry, P&A. I'm going to support it. I think it's a good development. Most people are opposed to small lot housing. This is 800 and lot larger. And it certainly is probably better than the surrounding subdivisions because it is a larger development. So I just can't see any reason to refuse it. Thank you.
Speaker 4, Councillor Mackenzie.
I'll speak in favour for Councillor Gollay's alternative motion there. It's zoned LDR2, so purely just it's inconsistent with the zoning of that. I agree with every point that Councillor Gollay has made, that it is sandwiched in between those two facilities that will have high use of those. I mean, if anything, maybe a 1 into 2, but certainly not the subdivision that's been applied for here. It's an inconsistent use of the zoning, plain and simple.
Having said that, officers have made a recommendation with conditions, so obviously that's the planning scheme that we have to deal with. Speaker against, Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, there's trying to crack a peanut with a nuclear bomb to refuse it. It's crazy talk. I'll tell you what this block is sandwiched between. It's sandwiched between really close to shops, really close to services, close to schools, close to place of worship, close to active transport pathways, close to public transport. It's sandwiched between all those magnificent services that families will want to use. That's what it's sandwiched between. So a refusal is not sensible in my opinion. An approval with various conditions that might address any of the further concerns councillors may have, but I'm very comfortable with the officer's report. I think the matters that have been raised by Councillor Golley in his matter are a stretch at best. And I think some of the things are a strength of the development that we're talking about, that it's nearby all these other services, including a school and a place of worship. So councillors, without pulling on the heartstrings of how important it is with the people that are looking for housing, those people who are maybe less fortunate than us, that will be looking for places to live that are near services, let's not throw them out into new greenfield sites and close, further out of our city. Let's put them in places where they can access services. A refusal, it really doesn't fit with what I feel is what we're doing to serve our city. If you have further concerns, let's look at an approval with various conditions if you choose not to support the refusal, and I think that's the right balance here. So thank you.
Speaker for the motion, Councillor Bishop.
Thank you. First of all, I'd just like to acknowledge we don't get to choose what we want. We need to assess this application, and I want to acknowledge that local councillors' awareness of the area and some of the historic challenges that we are facing, and I think it's not just our council, every council is facing in terms of engineering proposed solutions when it comes to things like overland flow. And I have got some concerns about point 3, and I think they are real concerns. I would not want to see further impacts or worsening effects that are caused ancillary with a development of this site. I think going back to point 1, which Councillor Mackenzie made very clearly, it is LDR2, and that identifies it as 6,000 square metre lots, acknowledging there was a house there at the point that the areas either side were zoned for community facilities. We're dealing with a historic issue here, and we need to acknowledge that that caveat was given to allow them to continue that use. It did not presume that there would be a further subdivision, and I think that's the point that we need to be very clear about here, and it's not something, Councillor Mitchell, that I'm saying we don't want to allow people to live in this city. It's about the history and the context of the surrounding residential interface with community facility land zone, which is the point 2. And I think that's very clearly made. I think we need to be very clear about our views. But if this is challenged in the P&E court, I would like to see further flood studies, and I would like to contest some of the issues, particularly in something, as the councillor has mentioned, the divisional aware councillor has suggested, that may, if we did do supplementary examination, may come back with a different finding about the potential impacts. I understand they're addressed, and that is compliant, and on the face of it, I understand those things, but I know that the engineering standards in other places are causing concerns, and I would not want to see that exacerbated. So at this point, I'm standing with the proposed alternate motion and in support, noting that we do need to assess this application in front of us. Thank you.
Just might get, David, if you might just assist me just in regards to some comments being made in regards to getting a second chance of a hydrological report just if it goes to court, because what normally happens...
I didn't say if it goes to court. I would like to have seen
yeah, but I don't think...
inform us a little more.
I don't think you have that... I don't think you have that choice. I mean, we have to assess what's provided to us. I might just get a... I thought you mentioned when...
We'll turn that into a question then, if I may.
No, thank you. Thank you. I'll ask David to respond if that's all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So through you to Councillor Bishop. So standard practice with development applications is an applicant will lodge all of the supporting material that they consider they require to justify their proposal. If we're not provided sufficient material, we will request that from an applicant. Now, in this particular application, the applicant has provided their flood impact assessment. That's been assessed by our internal experts, our engineering assessment team. The conclusion that we've come to is that this proposal would not have any material impact on upstream or downstream properties. Now, that said, we do know there is a real issue with stormwater drainage in this particular locality. Council has in its own local government infrastructure plan plans to upgrade the outfall out to increase capacity in the stormwater drainage for this particular area. But this development of itself does not impact negatively upon this locality.
When everyone else has had a chance to speak, no, I'll go around the room and come to questions. So we are up to speakers against. Councillor Edwards.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. I've got full confidence in this report. For goodness sake, if you look at that area, what Councillor Hewlett was saying about the size of those particular homes, that's exactly what we need. It's a perfect placement. Thinking that we're going to win if it goes to a court case on the history of things, that doesn't work that way. They assess it, what's on the town plan now, what the officers have assessed. There's no way council can, in my belief, ever refuse this and win the case. I think it just adds to the area. So I just don't understand why you want to oppose it. So I'm not going to support this motion.
Speaker for the motion. Okay, questions? Councillor Bishop, you had an extra question?
Yes, just acknowledging that the wider issue does have hydrological concerns. Is there further information, maybe not directly related to this report, that would help us in our decision making that we need to gather so that we can be clear when we're making a decision like this? And I believe that the hydrology is an issue. I've heard from the councillor that it's an issue. Is there further studies that could help us make an informed decision that would be useful for us? Acknowledging that I'm asking a hypothetical question because this is an application that's before us, but I'm aware that historically that's information we don't have.
We understand your question.
Okay.
Dave.
Thank you, Councillor. No, we don't believe so. We believe you've got all the information you need based upon the reports that have been submitted and assessed by officers and based upon the knowledge we have of that locality. We believe you've got all the information you need to make a decision.
There are no other questions from other councillors. There are.
I think Wendy has her hand up.
Oh, my apologies, Councillor Boglari. Question or speaker for the motion?
No, it's a question, please.
Yep. Over to you.
Look, this is a really peculiar spot because if you just looked at it and it was zoned correctly, I think that it would be a definite one to approve. But I'm concerned because it isn't the right zoning, and we're always telling residents, you know, you have to go by the zoning. In the last planning scheme, when we were doing consultation, a lot of areas of this zoning were considered to be changed. I'm wondering, was this one of those areas? Did council at that time consider changing it? And if this is not approved today, these residents can then come up for the next planning scheme, can't they, and get a change in zoning more applicable to what they want?
I'll get that response, but obviously if they go through an application process, that in effect does give them a change of zoning. David, do you want to respond?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. So, I mean, council has to make a decision based upon the application before you. It's code assessable and it has to be assessed against the relevant codes within the planning scheme. Regardless of any history, that's the decision that you need to make today. I know there's been many questions around the lot size question and whether the lot sizes are actually compliant with the planning scheme or city plan. Now, councillors, you may recall, some of you that were here and some that have joined council since, that in 2018 and preceding years, council wanted to have an absolute minimum lot size. So for this particular precinct, it was 6,000 square metres and nothing less than that. In approving the planning scheme back in 2018, the planning minister of the day didn't accept that position from council, and the planning minister imposed a condition upon city plan that said, and I'll just deal with this particular zone and precinct, that it's a 6,000 square metre minimum lot size, but then added a caveat to that, which is unless the density of the proposed development is consistent with the character and density of the surrounding area. So it's not a case that you can simply say it's 6,000 square metres and anything less will be refused. You have to consider the supplementary criteria around if it's less than 6,000 square metres, is it still consistent with the density and character of the area? Now, the assessment of officers is that in this particular case, the resulting density is consistent with the density and character of the area and therefore is compliant with the planning scheme. If council were to refuse the application, then the applicant would have decisions to make as to whether they appeal that decision, whether they make a further application, whether they were to make a submission or a future planning scheme. We don't know what they may choose to do, but certainly council needs to make a decision today based upon the benchmarks or the relevant codes in the planning scheme only.
I think I've just
So
asked.
David,
Sorry, Wendy. I've just asked Sarah to bring up the photo in the report.
Yeah, I've got that on my
medium density.
Yeah, that was the one. That's the one I was looking at. So this is code accessible, and the lot sizes they're subdividing down to are allowable under this zoning.
That's correct. If you accept that the resulting density is consistent with the character of the area, then yes, that's compliant with the planning scheme. And the officer's recommendation is, sorry, Councillor, the officer's recommendation is consistent with the density and character.
Thank you. We're up to questions. I think Councillor Mitchell, then Councillor Mackenzie.
Yes, through you to David Jeans. Noting that an approval with conditions keeps we as councillors in the conversation, serving our community, and a refusal puts us out of the conversation and into the P&E court. Can potentially
up to the applicant.
Potentially, the applicant obviously has an ambition, so I think it's reasonable to speculate there. So, can I ask through you, Madam Chair, through to David Jeans, is it possible that once council is out of the conversation and into court, could the court actually increase the density of that area further to what's been asked in this application?
Thank you, Councillor. Difficult to speculate. The court won't actually make a decision on an alternative proposal. An appellant could choose to make a change to an application, which the court may accept, but that's pure speculation at this stage.
Councillor Mackenzie, question?
Yes, thank you. On the flood impact assessment report, obviously the back of this property does get impacted by flood and storm. It's got flood and storm tide overlay. So at the back of this property, it's kind of where that overlay is. There's going to be 2 lots there. One of those, it looks like just about half the property would be then covered in a storm flood overlay. And that is my concern. So what is the condition to limit that impact then, to stop that home backyard from flooding? It's clearly,
Thank you. So just referring with questions in regards to the condition. Councillor Golay? Councillor Golay? Councillor Golay? The office is going to respond to that
councillors.
question.
In terms of the findings of the hydrology impact study, they have demonstrated that the future development footprint is above that particular flood-prone area. And also they proposed to do filling to raise those particular building envelopes above the floodplain. And then the rest of the site will be sloped downwards to minimise that fill and impact on the overland flow further to the east.
Mr. Mackenzie, another question?
Yeah, sorry, to understand that. So they're pushing it from, so it's all going to be sloped from Beveridge Road to the back. So we're going to get overland flow from one property, next property, next property, next property, next property,
no,
to the back where they're going to backfill it to make those back 2 lots higher.
So you've got 2 sort of competing elements. So the first one is they maintain their pre-development stormwater situation by providing an on-site detention system, which is located within the driveway. And then that'll once that detention's been done, that'll be conveyed to that overland flow path that heads towards the east. In terms of the overland flow path itself, by tapering the site down at the back there, they are trying to minimise the amount of impact of that overland flow path heading east. So essentially what they're doing is battering it down as opposed to filling that back bit of the site to block it, essentially.
Councillor Berridge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the back of Councillor Mitchell's question, which I thought was a really good question, potentially could the P&E Court reverse this back to community use zone, noting that the school will also need to look for future growth in this area?
The short answer to that, Councillor, is no, they wouldn't revert the zoning to community purpose. If there were to be an appeal to the court would essentially stand in the shoes of council to make a decision based upon the current zoning and the proposal before the court. The court would not be determining an alternative proposal or an alternative zoning.
Can you just add to that too, for Councillor Berridge's understanding, even if we were, as I said, suggested earlier, to change the zone through a scheme amendment, that this applicant would still have an opportunity to apply for exactly what they're applying for, because there is a time period in which which was under the superseded plan, for example.
Well, there's 2 elements to that, Madam Mayor. The first is if you were to change the scheme to community facilities, this is an existing lawful residential use. And that will be maintained in perpetuity until it ceases for some other purpose. A council can't change that existing lawful use. If you were to amend the planning scheme to community facilities, you're quite right, Madam Mayor, the applicant or the proponent or the owner would have 1 year in which to lodge an application requesting that a proposal is assessed against the current planning scheme. So we may see a similar proposal come forward, even in that scenario.
Challenges of the Planning Act, and obviously trying to maintain a reasonable legal bill, as I look at our legal counsel back there. Any other questions? Councillor Hewlett, a question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to confirm with the Planning Officer, David, thank you for the answers, by the way. Councillor Golle mentioned in the recent workshop that the original application was for 22 lots and it was reduced down. Is that correct?
Not to our knowledge. The proponent may have been considering some other or alternative proposal, but what was lodged is very similar to what's before you today.
The other question I have is the South East Auckland Structure Plan, obviously when it started, the big issue for a lot of developers down there was getting the sewer brought forward. It was expensive, the soil wasn't conducive to a shallow sewer system, blah, blah, blah. But now that all those services are right up onto Beveridge Road now, I think that changes the whole nature of the value of this block in terms of a residential area, because years ago there would have been no chance of whoever owned that lot of affording to bring the sewer from wherever it had to come from to just service that lot. So now the services are there, it just makes it's a reasonable expectation that this residential would happen, I assume.
I think that's correct, Councillor, yes.
You have an opportunity to sum up, Councillor Golle, at the end. You have another question, Councillor Bishop?
Yes, just want to clarify 100% that it is code assessable that we are assessing.
Yep, that's correct, Councillor.
And if I could just, if you could remind me, David, because you've been here almost as long as me, across the road, the townhouses, that was a result of a Planning and Environment Court decision, wasn't it? It was a structure planned area that the state government imposed at the time on council, and if I recall, they may have been lots that then went to court and became. Can you recall that? I'm just trying to understand this. It's a fairly complex area, like some of those little areas in that part of the city. I'm pretty sure they weren't medium density when in the structure plan, but went to court and became medium density.
No, I believe they are medium density in the structure plan.
It was medium density in the structure plan.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? I'll go back to summing up. Councillor Golle.
Thank you. Could I just ask that we have the photo brought back up of the site as it's presently, please? The one on the right. If we just zoom in and just bring it up there. Thank you. So councillors, in relation to the characteristics of the area, what you're seeing there, all those grey roofs are presently still under construction. Right along that area, there has been a bit of a chopped approach where various people have purchased. That's still under construction. It's not within the characteristic of what's suddenly there and been there for a long time. That's being built now. We're not talking about taking away the capacity for people to have access to new homes. New homes are being built in the area as we speak. If you look at that large piece of excavated ground on the top right-hand corner, that's actually a high-rise apartment that's going in there. On that intersection there, council has...
So council, in summing up, you're not really supposed to introduce new material?
Well, either we're going to talk facts or we're not.
Councillor, I'm just running by the standing orders, so you're not supposed to introduce new material in summing up.
That intersection we've just had to repair because of flooding, and further down the road, that land backs onto environmental management. I'm not trying here to stop people from having access to services and facilities. What I'm saying is that back when we did the city plan, we voted to keep that land as it was, as a 6,000 square metre lot. The sewerage system, the report says, yes, it's got access to facilities. No, each block has to have its own pumping system to pump back up towards the sewer that's being put in by the developers. We didn't put it in. We made the developers across the road put it in. There's no public transport down that road, right? There's going to be cost impacts. There's going to be social impacts on this land. If we try to just go, yep, no worries, that parcel, turn it into housing, I'm telling you, the future people who live there, and yes, you can say buyer beware, they will be the ones who will be calling this council in the future going, there's a problem. The church will be the one going, your 2 metre retaining wall is now acting like a flood zone and a waterfall and flooding next door. And you can huff and puff all you want, right? We've already seen it at the new estates that were approved by this council years ago in off Boundary Road, where they put in 2 metre high retaining walls going, oh, we'll capture all the floodland. And how many issues did we have to the acreage properties who had waterfalls running through their homes next door? And I can show you all the photos and the footage if you want. Just because a developer comes forward and says, hey, I've got a cunning plan and I've got my reports, we're assessing what they have produced, not our reports, where we go out and we do the assessment and fact check and look at the ground. And we're making decisions here. Some councils are going to make decisions here today on a piece of paper that someone else has presented. They got no clue of the history of that area. So I'm telling you now, if we go ahead and approve this, I am confident that we're going to have future issues. And I'm confident that if we refuse this, a magistrate will agree that it was a sensible outcome to try to just jam 6 houses. It's not about lot size.
Okay, councillor.
It's not about reducing people's positions to live somewhere. This is about a sensible outcome and a managed use of that land.
Thank you. Just to be aware, there's no guarantee that even if we were to refuse it today that there wouldn't be houses built there. I think it's important to remember that. And I think officers did say that our engineers did assess this. It wasn't just taken on its merit. I'll put the motion, those in favour? Just checking online. That's lost, councillors.
Sorry, excuse me, Mayor, that was those in favour of the amended motion. I was in favour. Thank you.
Okay, still lost. Those in favour, I'll just take the vote. Those in favour, Councillor Golay, Councillor Hughes, Councillor Berridge, Councillor Bishop. Those against, Councillor Mitchell, Councillor Hewlett, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Boglari, Councillor Tolte, Councillor Williams. Now, I believe, Councillor Tolte, you've put forward an alternative motion to cover some of the concerns that may have been raised in the recent one.
Thank you, Madam. I believe that the alternate motion, officers have provided the wording, has been sent to the minutes and meeting staff. So is that it there? I've got limited access.
Can I ask that you... Before you speak to it, I probably need to ask that we have a seconder for that. Councillor Mitchell.
Okay, well...
Over to you, Councillor Tolte.
Okay, so this is a proposal that rather than an approval, a preliminary approval is provided, which allows us to provide a response within the designated time frame. And the concerns that I see, and I appreciate that Councillor Golay was looking for a refusal, and I understand why. I share all of his concerns in this regard, but you know, our court list is growing, and I don't know after previous decisions that we would have a great deal of opportunity in court to get a better outcome. And we could come out with a higher density if we end up in that situation. So what's being proposed here in a nutshell is essentially a similar plan to what the applicant has asked for, reducing the application from 6 lots to 5 lots. Those smaller lots that are in the middle of the plan, less than 1,000 square metres, that they not have a building envelope applied to them, because that is impractical. We've had many situations where people have had to come back consistently to have those changed or amended, and there is no, and the officers have agreed, that they don't serve any purpose on those lots. So to make it simple, what I have suggested is that we ask them to submit further information which alters what is currently lot 5 and 6 on the back lot down to 1 lot. So you would have the large lot already at the front, then 3 lots in the middle, and then a large lot at the back again, and that the large lot at the back or those lots within the development that are over 1,000 square metres might have a building envelope, and that would then ensure that the flooding concerns from the extended rear area of the property are left as a natural overland flow, with the amenity able to be provided that someone could put a house on that lot without having to do significant earthworks to change the overland flow. So essentially, this is a preliminary approval with conditions that asks that the developer develop as per their plan without applying building envelopes to the smaller lots and applying a building envelope to each of the lots over 1,000 square metres, which would presumably be the one at the front and the one at the back. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tolty. Speaker against, Councillor Bishop? No? Speaker against, Councillor Hewlett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Be careful what you wish for is what I'd give advice to here, because this developer could go to court and say, well, if they don't want six really nice lots, then I'm going to put medium density there because the medium density matches the zone across the road. So, and look, I've got nothing against medium density. It fulfills a great purpose in our city. And I agree with Councillor Mitchell, infill is the best way to go because the services are already there. Now, if you're going to try and manipulate this to make the developer self-imposed a building envelope, we didn't put that on him. So obviously there's an amenity issue there. And to try and reduce what I think are 6 good lots down to 5 is just ludicrous, because this developer has done council well and the local community well by putting forward such a good development. So I'm not going to support this motion either. Thank you.
Speaker for the motion, Councillor Mackenzie.
My concern with the subdivision were those 2 lots at the back, and this for me resolves that issue of that flood and that flood overlay at the back there. So reducing that backlog down just to 1 lot, for me, alleviates that concern that we continually have in this city where there's inappropriate development in areas that we know already floods. So I'll support a preliminary approval of a 1 into 5, having that backlot reduced down to 1 large one. Thank you.
Speaker against, Councillor Gollay.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Again, I'm going to speak against this motion. I met with the developer and his intent was to put 22 small lots in there. Whether he presented that to council or not, that's beside the point. That was their original plan. And the original advice from officers at the time that it was not an acceptable use of the land. Now that we've got a bit of building across the road, suddenly it's acceptable. Okay, that is still under construction. The whole point of this is that it is wedged between a school and a church, community areas. This is not about denying people their right to live somewhere, etc., etc. I'm actually quite interested to know why some councillors are so adamant to push this across the line. Is there a historical conflict here, please?
Councillor, if you
Has
have
anyone got a conflict?
Councillor Gollay, I don't think that's the way you would address that. You wouldn't have to have some details.
Well, I think
about
it
that.
needs to be raised.
Well, Councillor, you know the process.
I'm quite interested to know, because when it was under another division, I recall a media article with the hell no Fab Five standing out there going, we don't want small lot development, we don't want units in this area. Now it's okay.
Okay, Councillor Gollay, it's not an appropriate discussion unless you've got some detail. If you think that someone has a conflict, then you are at liberty, or we have a requirement to actually outline what that is, not just ask the question. And then I'll have to go through the process, as you're aware.
Well, I'm just asking because
well, I can't deal with that.
I just don't understand why there's this. Yeah. Anyway, I'll leave it. I'm not voting for this either. It's not an appropriate use for that particular piece of land.
Thank you, Councillor. Speaker 4. Speaker 4, Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, I think our community understands that planning and isn't easy. I think our community has matured an awful lot over the last few years as a council, as the impacts of all sorts of things around our world are there. And our community will understand that this council makes a decision. They want us in the room when we do so. So I think a approval with these conditions is appropriate. I think our community wants us to then have these professional negotiations between council professionals and developers professionals overseen by us, and I think this is a good balance on what's going on. To go to either extreme is not serving our community well, and I'm going to put my faith back in our community, who I think have an ever increasing understanding that we've got some tough decisions to make together on their behalf, and I think this is a great balance.
Speaker against, Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. Whilst I admire the intent of what you're trying to achieve, I think saving one unit is kind of pointless. I think if the developer there, we present them with an opportunity, I think there's a high risk that he'll come back and he'll put more than just 6 units. He'll get a whole lot more to recover his costs there. I don't really see what you're achieving here. Either prove it as it is or risk having something much worse.
Speaker for the motion, Councillor Bishop.
Yeah, in speaking for, I'm acknowledging that the alternative is 6 lots, and for a couple of reasons. I do support Councillor this motion's proposal to remove the covenants. I think that's going to be up for the individual owners of the lots to work out where they want to put their houses on their lots once they actually acquire what ultimately may get approved there. So I support the removal of the requirement for a covenant, which the applicant has put forward. It's not a requirement of council. I support that. The question that I have, going down to 5 lots, which I agree with because it will allow more overland flow of the natural water in the area. When I look at page 169 of 254 of this report, which is in the there's the flooding impacts. I've got 2 questions for officers. One is there any way that we could condition a gifting of a portion of the land at the rear for environmental purposes to allow the flow of water, because there is a clear pinch point on what I would consider the south west point, where there's quite a bit of water that flows through there, and otherwise there's houses on one side, and then there's these new lots that would come on the other side, which will narrow that pinch point there. What I'm trying to get at is how can we best resolve that overland flow to have no worsening effect? Is there a battering that we could condition of the land to allow it to stay as close to the natural overland flow, to the natural topology that's there now? Or could we ask for a conditioning of some of that land to be gifted back to council for environmental purposes to allow that effect?
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Bishop. So regardless of whether this comes into public ownership or not, there cannot be any nuisance caused as a result of development on that land. So the reports that we've got to date support development of 6 lots without having that adverse impact. Reducing it to 5, we would anticipate that would continue to be the case. We don't see any reason or purpose to bring this into public ownership at cost to the public purse for a stormwater drainage purpose, because that will be there regardless of tenure.
So supplementary, if I may, through you, Madam Chair, is there anything further that we could allow above and beyond the engineering design standards that would just allow the free flow of water by battering, or just requesting that back section is not raised?
So again, the report we've got, which has been agreed by officers, is that the works proposed to support the 6-lot reconfiguration are appropriate to maintain conditions. If Council agrees with Councillor Talty's motion and a preliminary approval is issued and it goes to 5 lots, then there'll have to be some adjustment to those engineering works, and we would again ensure that there is no worsening that occurs as a result of those works.
And that would be my request, and I would support that, because I think that area that we've identified previously is very important for managing that legacy issue. Thank you.
Yes, I understand. Councillor Boglari, you've got your hand up for a question.
Yes, when we're on to questions, please. Are we on questions?
Let me double check. Sorry. I think there are no other speakers against. So, Councillor Boglari, go for it.
Okay, sorry. Look, I'm sorry I missed the workshop. Best outcome here would be if the school had bought it, but unfortunately we're not there and we've got a code application in front of us. Councillor Talty, in her motion here, has endeavoured to assist with some flood impact and and address the density as well. Councillor Bishop was sort of on the same track as I am. I just wanted to ask Officer Jeans if he could just explain the impact of this. I was listening then, and you said there would have to be some modification, but also with the removal, because I know Councillor Hewlett was concerned with the removal of the building envelopes. Could that affect the flooding issue, which seems to be the main issue here now?
Thank you, Councillor.
Or do you feel it is strong enough as it is under the officer's motion?
So through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Boglari. So removal of the building envelopes doesn't have an impact on flood matters, and essentially in terms of the lots less than 1,000 square metres, which are those that Council proposes to remove the building envelopes, that will mean it just reverts back to current city plan in terms of design and siting requirements. So instead of the building envelope.
So why were the envelopes put there in the first place? For what constructive purpose?
Well, that's a question for the applicant, but city plan will continue to apply to those lots, regardless of whether you put building envelopes on those properties or not.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Boglari?
And you have gone over that, the hydraulics and flooding and those reports, and the officers are happy, because I agree. We've got way too many subdivisions across the city that are causing issues to existing residents and, you know, neighbouring land. But you're assured that it's as satisfactory as it can be, and this change here wouldn't impact that?
Again, as we've said, the officers have assessed the 6-lot subdivision and agree that what's proposed is appropriate, and reducing that to 5 lots certainly wouldn't have an adverse impact.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Would you like to sum up, Councillor Tulty?
Yes, Madam Mayor. All I was seeking to do here was to get an outcome that covered the middle ground, and did speak to the concerns that I was hearing from most of the councillors. I know that it isn't the outcome that Councillor Golay, as the local area councillor, would like, and the matter will, once we do a preliminary approval, the matter will then be open for the applicant to come back and discuss with officers how they might go about improving those flood overland reports. So there is room for further negotiation in this, whereas the previous motion would have just sent us either to court or to a new application. So yes, I'm seeking a middle ground which will not increase our court costs. Thank you.
Okay, there's no guarantees of that ever, by the way, just to be sure.
No,
they could still.
Absolutely.
Understand.
But I think this is a better outcome, and I adamantly do believe that applying building envelopes to lots less than 800 square metres is just a pointless exercise which costs the residents more money and stress and achieves nothing. So I really am confident that it's best not to have envelopes on those properties. Thank you.
I will put the motion then, councillors. Those in favour? That's supported. Those in favour, let me go through. I'm checking the screen and the hands. Councillor Mitchell, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Bishop, Councillor Boglari, Councillor Tulty, Councillor Hughes, Councillor Williams. Those against, Councillor Golay, Councillor Hewlett, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Berridge. Thank you, councillors. Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda. There's no notice of intention to repeal or amend, or notice of motion, or urgent business. We now have a confidential. Where have I got?
16.1.
Yeah. 16.1, I'm with you.
Sorry, I'm looking at notes.
Recycling and waste.
My apologies. How could I forget this one? Sorry. Must have taken the notes out of my back. Anyway, 16.1, mover and seconder, thanks. Thank you. We don't have a mover and seconder? Move Councillor Bishop.
Can I second, please? Yes.
So Councillor Hughes has seconded it. Councillor Bishop, would you like to speak to it? Thanks.
Just to acknowledge that waste is a significant issue, and it's probably one of the most increasing resources that we need to manage as a city. This seeks to allow residents a number of trips to the recycling stations, 26 per year, and it also seeks to identify those people who are making trips far in excess of that and seek to make sure that there is a user pays element relating to that, which I think supports the officers and the rest of the city. So I support this.
Speaker against, Councillor Edwards.
I can remember, must be almost 11 years ago. Am I on? Yes, 11 years ago when we made our refuse free for domestic use, and I know how well supported that was by our community. And in this council, we try and, when we compare ourselves with other councils, usually we try and get in the middle, where not the best and not the worst, which should become kind of average in that way. But with refuse, we kind of stand out that other councils, residents are envious of the situation we've got, because we've got an equitable situation where commercial, they all pay, all domestic, it's free, and yes, there is a little bit of twiddling on the side with some people who abuse the system. You come to this new proposed system of 26 per year, that's inequitable, because I've got 3 cars. This is based on not households, it's based on vehicles. My neighbour's got 1 car. I've got 3 times more trips I can make. So all of a sudden you've created something which is basically equitable to something which is inequitable. And I don't think that's the way to go. I think there should be other ways to look at monitoring those people who abuse the system. But what will happen is, next year, it'll come back to us that we've adopted a system which is inequitable and people don't like it. So what will we do? Let's have a voucher system. We'll say 4 vouchers a year on your rates. And then it still becomes inequitable because the people renting won't get those vouchers. It'll go to the landowners. I think we've got a really good system. People like it. We should look at other ways for doing this. And I think if we go down this path, we're just going to make this inequitable for our residents.
Speaker for the motion, Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Mayor. And
sorry,
thank you,
Councillor Hughes. Councillor Tolter, your hand is up. Is that you getting in line, or is that you not putting your hand down?
That's me in line to speak against, please, Madam Mayor.
All right, Councillor Hughes, speaking for.
Yes, I am speaking for. I put a lot of thought, a lot of research into this opportunity that the officers have presented. I went and sat in the gatehouse for a couple of hours and I know it was only a couple of hours, at the Birkdale transfer station, which is in my division. And I was actually, embarrassingly so, a little shocked at those, as Councillor Edwards said, it is a minority, but the entitlement of those that were clearly in breach. They were clearly operators, they were of businesses, and they were bringing in waste. And the gatehouse had records on those vehicles coming in, and there was just not a jolly thing that they could do. I was at the top of the transfer station. I did a couple of hours up there as well. And again, I was shocked at the disrespect to our council officers that worked at the Birkdale transfer station with regard to the number of times that they came in, and also the number of blatant lies that this is what they had on their load, and then once they got to the top, that was absolutely not the case. And our officers really did an outstanding job while I was there. Now, it was only a few hours down and at the top, but Councillor Edwards, I could clearly in just those couple of hours, see those that were mistreating the system. So if this is the best we can come up with now to try and help our residents and reduce our costs, I think it's a good move to start with. Thank you.
Councillor Tolte speaking against.
Yes, thanks, Madam Mayor. Look, for a start, this report relies entirely on assumption and supposition, none of which I believe will be borne out over the long term. We all know what happens when we assume. We have 99% of people doing the right thing, and we have a proposal here to punish the 99% in order to find an easy way to manage the 1% that are doing the wrong thing. And Councillor Hughes has just said that it was very easy for her to tell sitting in the gatehouse who was doing the wrong thing. Maybe we need a local law to help manage that, but this is not the way forward. This is nothing more than a move to reintroduce tip fees by stealth. And I will take book on the fact that, as Councillor Edwards said, it's just the first step in several. And, you know, officers in the department will say, no, councillor, that's not the case. And they will tell us, I will take book that if we introduce this now, within a year or two, the next council will receive another report, and the issue will be that the cost of giving away free visits to the tip, in addition to the cost of managing the policy of limiting the number of visits to the tip, will be too significant and unfair in nature. And then the next council will be asked to reduce further the opportunity for people to have their free tipping. The policy allows dual vehicle households twice as many visits, as Councillor Edwards mentioned, and provides a new recommendation for a simple introduction of domestic tip fees. Well, it will be much simpler in the future. They will come and they will say, we can't manage this policy. Let's just introduce a nice, fair fee for all. I will take bets on it now, Madam Mayor. And it will happen in phases, less visits eventually reducing. But mark my words, if this is approved today, you may as well just bring back the tip fees now. To top it off, the department are not suggesting even that we introduce domestic tip fees for residents who go over their allocation. Their allocated number of visits once completed, they're proposed that they should immediately be considered commercial waste cheats who must pay a commercial fee. The next question for me then becomes, well, for the residents of Southern Redland Bay, much of the commercial load of waste is required to go through the Birkdale Tipping Centre. So I can only assume that the residents of Redland Bay, once they tip over their allocated number of visits, will be expected to pay commercial fees and to travel past the Redland Bay tip to Birkdale. Do not support this, councillors. If you really think that this is an issue, then take it to the election next year, and then the new council can introduce tip fees if they choose. But to do this today is a slippery slope, and I certainly won't be supporting it. And I will be making note that it is nothing but an introduction of tip fees by stealth. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Tolte. Councillor Boglari, you've got your hand up to speak for it.
Thank you. I'm really offended. I don't like words like stealth, assumptions, and I don't like other councillors giving their personal opinions as if it's fact. Could we please ask the officers to come forward? Because I went through the political debacle that this was made into 10 years ago, and I don't want to go through that again. The costs of waste is increasing over the last decade incredibly. So can we please have officers give a brief outline of the reasonings why this is being sought after to be brought into today, please?
Thank you.
Because I believe it is responsible and it has been researched.
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the question, councillors. The decision to decide or to propose a fair and reasonable limit of 26 has come after a number of years of consultation with neighbouring local governments, of reviewing the data, of the behaviours that are exhibited, some of which Councillor Hughes has referred to in her first-hand observations. We know by the data, and it's consistent year on year, that 1.5% of vehicles will be caught within this 26 limit. It is fair and it's reasonable, and yes, for those properties that do have 2 vehicles that can transport waste, it is a reasonable, yet in our research and consultation with neighbouring councils, including those who charge gate fees, they feel that applying it to the vehicle is the most cost-effective and best utilisation of officer time, technology and resources, versus those applying it to a property, which includes new systems, new databases, and longer delays at the facilities. This is a reasonable approach which will allow 98.5% of our community to access the facilities within their normal day-to-day or week-to-week, month-to-month waste disposal needs. It supports the use of our existing curbside waste recycling and green waste services, but most importantly, it manages costs going forward. We have an increasing waste levy that will only continue to impact the community and ratepayers year on year. This is a behaviour change campaign that we believe and is evidenced through other local governments in reducing the demand on our ageing infrastructure, reducing costs, and changing behaviour for the benefit. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Councillor Boglari.
Thank you, Rob. Now, this has also been an election promise of some councillors, and considering comments that were just said, I'm very cautious that those who might do the responsible thing today are also being set up for a political campaign against them, and we shouldn't have that fear when we're voting.
So, Councillor Boglari, I'd asked you to talk to the item, thanks. You were mentioning opinion before, and I think you need to talk to the item.
Yep, and I spoke to that opinion, which has become part of this item due to previous political interference.
Thank you, Councillor. Speakers against? Councillor Hewlett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess I'm a little puzzled by this motion, but 26 times a year, like, I don't think I've been to the tip in the whole year before, because I can't back a trailer very well anyway. And I think Red Waste do a brilliant job at educating the community on what to do with their green bins and FOGO and all that other sort of stuff. And the people that are going 26 times a year are either acreage owners, which I don't think should be penalised if they've got a lot of trimming and lawn mowing to do. They shouldn't be penalised because they're going over 26 times a year. And I don't think the average person in a residential area, urban area, are going 26 times a year. So we're looking at landscaping guys, and the landscaping guys that I talk to continually complain about the fees they have to pay, so they're not getting through. So I find this real, and look, I'm proud to say that I campaigned on no tip fees, and I'm very glad I did, because that's one thing this council gets complimented on regularly, and I believe the CEO has delivered some fantastic efficiencies over the years so that we can afford to offer this service just across the whole council, to offer this service through Red Waste. So I'm voting against this, and I'm happily to support no tip fees. Thank you.
Speaker 4, Councillor Golley.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I wasn't around when you had that big election campaign of promises. All I know is that I was a ratepayer that got lumped with a cost in my rates to cover the use of a tip that I didn't use. That's the essential, supposed free tip fees. All it does is get redistributed across the community. The reason this was brought into a motion and a proposal of 26 visits was because there are certain elements within the community who are running non-registered businesses, who are advertising on Facebook, who are charging $100 a go, promising elderly residents, we'll come and take your rubbish away. They're not They're not marked vehicles, they're not listed as commercial entities, and they're turning up to our tips for free, dumping the rubbish. Now, on top of that, those residents are already being charged in their rates for a free use. They're not using it, unbeknownst to them that they can, and then someone's coming along and heading them up for $100 a go to take their rubbish away. This is designed to capture and put into fact of data those individuals who are shirking the system and taking advantage of what is our free, alleged free service, because nothing's for free. Everyone's paying for this. And that's why there was the decision to look at 26 visits. It was to capture those people who were pretending not to be commercial, I'm an acreage holder and I've got to clean up my yard, when they're out there running businesses that are not registered and taking advantage of our free, allegedly, tip fees. That's what this was about. It wasn't about impacting residents or, you know, some of the other complaints that I've experienced from alleged people doing the right thing is the tonnage rates. You know, I might have a 5.5 tonne truck. I'm just cleaning up my backyard. They turn up with 4.5 tonne and they get through the door for free, because I'm using my commercial vehicle, but it's really just for my own backyard. All right. I'm sorry. We have created a situation here because it is free and there is no checks and balances at the gate. We have to implement something like this to regulate those who are shirking the system. It's as cut and dry as that. We're not talking about impacting residents who, in good faith, use the tip when they need to. I'm lucky to go to the dump maybe twice a year, and yet I'm charged through my rates to cover the cost of people who are shirking the system. No thanks.
Speaker against, Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, I'll start with a bit of an apology to officers, because I was an enthusiastic cheerleader for the principle of this, but subsequently, with some new information that's come through to me, and we can't separate that from the historic political elements, which I won't go into either. But I think saving on appropriate levels of service is something we should celebrate. But I don't believe that this is the way to go, and I don't think it's the right time to move forward. As we've heard from Councillor Hughes and others, that it's pretty obvious who some of the abusers are, and I'd like Council to think of what are the other ways that we can look at those people who are abusing the system, but also use the time over perhaps the next 6 to 12 months and give a new council an opportunity to have the community better educated to what's going on. We've got some great news going forward with the FOGO that's coming on, the regional waste initiatives, continued rollout of our green bins, and I think how to use our resource recovery centres, or the dump, more wisely could be started now, and then perhaps offer a new council and a community that's been given a bit more time to digest it, take it out of the political arena, and let a new council make that decision. So I love the idea of us looking at shared responsibilities with our community and looking at appropriate levels of service. I'd love to support this on that principle, but I think there are just too many landmines and hand grenades, and I think looking forward, if I'm here next term, I'd like a proper campaign bringing our community along with us and looking at bringing something forward that doesn't have the fear of any other things coming forward by stealth or otherwise. I'm not going to buy into that, but I think it is probably fair and reasonable, given the history of these sort of matters, that we just take a little bit more time. Those savings will still be made over the next generation if we can get it right. And if that's in 6 or 12 months, I think that's okay.
Speaker 4. Okay, no other speakers for. Question, Councillor Mackenzie.
Yes, just a question on the report. So it's page 464 of the agenda, which Diligent Board is 248, I think, if councillors who want to follow me along. It says that for the exemptions, it's got Queensland issued pension cards aren't our pension cards, etc., issued by the Australian government. So there's an anomaly in the report. So can that be clarified? Unallowed cards issued by
What page number was it?
It's page 464 of the agenda.
Thank you.
So all of our pension disability cards, etc., issued by the federal government, not the Queensland government.
Through Madam Chair, yes, we would not be differentiating. If you're a resident in Redlands and you hold a valid pensioner card, we would not be. So if that's an error on our behalf.
And just, I guess, on the back of Councillor Edwards' comment, how would council officers intend to resolve the issue of households with 5 cars versus 1 car? A household with 5 cars could go still well over 100 times to visit the centres, yet a household with 1 car only goes 26. So I'm just wondering, how do we then resolve that?
Through you, Madam Chair. The target, our customers who are utilising our free services under a fee or reward situation, so a gardener charging a homeowner for their services, including disposal. In most situations, our research, and this is all through collaboration with our neighbours, most of those properties will own and operate 1 vehicle suitable for the disposal, and they're also using their work vehicle, an unmarked ute in most situations, with a trailer. Their business practice and the practicality of moving that waste into another vehicle is not in their best interest from a time and a cost point of view. So the target group in the 1,100 odd vehicles that we're really focused on in this, who are visiting in excess of the 26, are very distinct, and they're not the target target group in which you might have a hatchback or a sedan or a standard family type vehicle, who are very easy to distinguish at the gatehouse that they're not generating waste for fee or reward. It is those vehicles who are 1 or 2 occupants within the vehicle who are carry a size and a load or tools and equipment within their vehicle that are very demonstratedly doing a service for fee or reward. However, under Council's existing policy, we don't have the means to apply or to make an assumption that they are commercial, because we don't have the policy backing to do that. We have to take it on face value or word in which they are telling us it's from their home, and in which case is often not supported through their behaviour or activity and transactions.
Councillor Boglary, you have a question?
Sorry, yes. I was just going to say, due to what I'm hearing here and some changes I'm seeing, if the option, this motion goes down, I'm happy to move option 2.
Thank you. Just let me get that. I don't know that you'd need a motion, but I will just make sure there's no other questions to be asked. Hand back to, who moved the motion? Councillor Bishop, to sum up.
Yeah, just acknowledging that the officers have actually been very clear with us about an issue that they've identified. We've all been in workshops and heard lots of officers' time coming up with a proposal, and you've had a lot of opportunity to put forward your views. And it seems that for all of the concerns about equity, and for all of Councillor Tolte's concerns about assumptions, you've either been making assumptions and not talking about them, or you're now making assumptions about politics potentially trumping this down the track, because that's the sort of stuff that's come up. There's been plenty of time for discussion here. The officers have...
Madam Mayor.
Your point of order?
Councillor Bishop isn't speaking to the motion.
I'm speaking
You're
summing
to
about
the issues that have been raised by the...
So, Councillor Bishop, I'm going to ask you to use your time to sum up as is required under the standing orders, and that's not introducing new material.
Well, as councillors who've attended workshops and had opportunity to discuss with officers, the officer's recommendation is before us, and if that doesn't go ahead, I would certainly support option 2 to look at a way to that council resolves to request further information and direct officers to consider alternative methods for residents and businesses to effectively and fairly participate in waste management services, which is what I think we have been doing. Support the officers with their recommendation at this stage.
Can we go straight to option 2?
No, we've got.
I'm happy to move that.
Councillors, you have been here long enough to know that you have a live motion on the books. Thank you,
that was
Councillor.
the
I have the floor. We will have to test this motion as we would do every other general meeting that I've ever attended in my history here. So with that, I'm going to put the motion that is live on the floor. Those in favour? Those against? Those in favour? Councillor Golay and Councillor Bishop. Just checking online, giving you time. Those against? Councillor Mitchell, Councillor Hewlett, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Berridge, Councillor Williams. Just double checking if we can test number 2 if you wish. Sorry, Councillor. Sorry. Oh, pardon. I call those online. Sorry, those in favour were Councillor Tolte, Hughes, and Boglari.
No, against. Against.
Sorry, against. My apologies. So that, just to be clear, those against was Councillor Mitchell, Councillor Hewlett, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Berridge, Councillor Williams, Councillor Boglari, Councillor Tolte, and Councillor Hughes. Thank you.
Thank you for the discussion. It was really good.
Thank you. And we have a mover for option 2 as that one's gone down. Moved by Councillor Bishop, seconded by Councillor Berridge. Would you like to speak to it any further? We've had a lot of debate on this already.
No, I'd just like to say that I think this option is exactly what we had intended with option 1. It's just that it didn't seem something got lost in translation. I think this would continue what we had been intending to do, so hopefully it can support officers. I'm happy to move option 2.
Speaker against, anyone? I've got some hands up on the screen. I'm not quite sure if they're speaking against.
No, I'd probably like to make a comment, Madam Mayor.
Where you have Councillor with standing orders, you can speak against, or you can ask a question. Any other speaker against? No? No. Questions? Councillor Tolte, you have a question, or I'll go straight to Councillor Mitchell.
I do have a question, if I can. My understanding here is that, we're trying to deal with an issue of a very small number of people who are creating a significant impost on the goodwill of our council and community in the way that we have decided to run our domestic waste.
Your question, Councillor Tolte?
And my question is, as we can count vehicles by number plate coming through, and the officers have clearly said that they are quite confident they know which vehicles this relates to, is it not possible to write a policy or a local law which then allows those particular people to be written to, and in a similar way that we declare certain residents to be, I don't want to raise other issues here, but, could we not declare those people to be in a particular group? I know that our waste management people at the moment, if we've got someone who has a commercial business like a landscaper or a lawn mower or whatever.
Councillor Tolte, we're kind of getting beyond a question, but could I just potentially...
I'm just trying to get to that. I know that we allocate half a dozen visits a year for those people to use as their private visits in their commercial trucks because, fairly, we try to give them an opportunity for their own waste. Could we not institute a similar thing where those people identified as being commercial get listed within those bans?
So the question is there a way that we can designate a commercial
policy?
Can I, before you respond, can I suggest that maybe you think about an amendment that suggests that you include the review, the possibility of a local law to manage this? Councillor Tolty, maybe you want to think about that while Nicole responds.
Through you, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
All I was going to say is that we'll take it offline and we'll come back with a proposition.
Okay, Councillor Mitchell, I think you were going to ask a question.
Yes, it was just in relation to option 2. I note the consider alternative methods. I was just wondering that I wouldn't want that scope to be limited and basically includes things like a local or any of those others, including community education, along the lines of as I spoke in the debate.
I think Councillor Tolty is working on an amendment to include that. Councillor Boglari, you have a question?
Yes, just to the officers. Can we, as Councillor Mitchell just mentioned, can we have an education piece on not only what the visitations cost, but how it also impacts on the functionality of the transfer stations and how they're not as efficient when people go with just one little bag, and maybe bring the community on board with us with these costings. In option 2, there isn't a date for when this is to be brought back to us. And due to past comments, I would suggest that they don't bother until after March next year. I'd hate to waste their time yet again.
I think that was also implicit in what other councillors said in the debate. So but
it's not, the date isn't in the option.
Well, I don't think that they have a long list of things to do anyway. I don't think that's going to be an issue for officers. Can I? Just based on what you said, Councillor Boglari, Councillor Tolty, if you're thinking about an amendment, can you also then refer to the education campaign?
Yes, I'm just trying to put something very quickly together to email to you now, Madam Mayor.
Oh, okay, thank you.
I don't really think transfer station users have any idea of the actual costs that the waste management across our city is.
I think that's a struggle we have with every service that we offer, libraries, etc. They don't understand there is a cost to all those things that make our city the place to live, but yeah, I agree. So I think Councillor Tolty is going to propose an amendment, and if there's no more speakers.
Excuse me, Mayor, just for clarity, is Councillor Tolty looking to amend option 2? Is that a correct,
yes.
a new amendment?
Correct.
Option 2, that's what I understood.
Yes, I'm just going to checking on the standing orders as best deal with that.
Just point of clarity, would it not be best to stick with option 2, which gives the officers fair and unfettered opportunity to consider alternative methods? That might include a local law. They can bring back a range of options. I wouldn't want to see, this is too important to do policy on the run. Thanks to Councillor Tolty in Melbourne doing something in this moment to come up with a solution that's trying to fix possibly one of the largest challenges that officers have spent a lot of time trying to raise. I think this gives them the opportunity to go away. Hopefully we'll respect what they bring back. But rather
Thank you, Councillor.
I think we should just go with the option that's in front of us.
Councillor Tolty, I'm in your hands if you wish to include that or allow the officers just to take that on notice.
Oh, Madam Mayor, I don't really mind. I'm of the belief that it's the wording of alternate methods. It says that we have rejected the current proposal, but we're open to looking at other methods. I would just suggest that, that should include educating the community that if they want to use their free tip visits, they have to get in the truck and go too. So I don't mind, honestly. I'm happy to support it as it is. I'm happy to try to provide a slight change, which just counts what I was about to send you is just to add on to what the wording that's currently in option 2. Along the lines of these alternate approaches should include consideration of a new local law or policy that will allow restrictions to be placed on people identified as operating a commercial business related to domestic waste, as well as education of local residents as to their rights and the cost of waste services.
I'd prefer it as
I
put
thought-
motion 2, if
I
I may.
thought- thank
Option
you.
2.
So we have a put motion. Councillor Bishop is
Yep.
moving the put motion. Is that what you're doing, Councillor Bishop?
Yeah, I'm happy to put that, and I hope that the officers can bring us back
Councillor,
something that we can all agree with.
We don't need the it's a put motion. It's actually a procedural motion. If you want to put the motion, I have to take a vote on that.
Put motion.
Those in favour of a put motion? Councillor Tolte?
Sorry, trying, my button's not
This
working.
is
Oh, there it
actually
is.
a procedural motion, not the actual motion ahead of us. Councillor
Yep,
Bishop asked
I'm
to put the
vote on
motion
it,
as it
yep.
is, so that's unanimous. So then we come back to the motion. Those in favour of option 2, that is also unanimous. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. A really good discussion and debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. We really don't need the extra fluffy bits at the end of all these motions, which are trying to get through the agenda. Thank you. Moving on to 17, 18 and 19. I haven't been advised of any of those. So we do have a confidential session, and I'm going to ask that question. All these people are chairing the meeting. I should have just stayed home in bed. You know, well, you're making me repeat myself. Is there a need to go into confidential, councillors? Councillor Tolte, you've got your hand up. I'm just checking if you want to go into confidential.
No, it's fine, Madam Mayor.
All right, so we'll go straight to the motions, in which case... Oh, sorry. You good, Peter? Sorry. Councillor Mitchell, you good? Okay. All right. Item 20.1 is the register of fees. Can I have a mover and seconder? Thanks. Move Councillor Edwards, seconded Councillor Berridge. Those in favour? Those against? Those in favour is Councillor Mitchell, Golay, Hewlett, Edwards, Berridge, Bishop, Williams. Those against? Oh, sorry, Councillor Boglari. Sorry, are you all supporting it now? Sorry, Councillor Boglari, Councillor Tolte and Councillor Hughes, just double checking.
I was trying to vote for, but I was just, my button was too slow.
So
Yes.
Councillor Boglari,
Ditto on 4.
Councillor Boglari, Councillor Tolte and Councillor Hughes. Those voting against is Councillor McKenzie. Thank you. Next item is 20.2, Officer's Recommendation, mover and seconder, thanks, which is the sponsorship program. Move Councillor Mitchell, seconded Councillor McKenzie. Those in favour? Councillor Hughes?
I'm against.
Okay, so that's supported, but I'll take the division. Councillor Mitchell, those in favour? Councillor Mitchell, Councillor Golay, Councillor Hewlett, Councillor Edwards, Councillor McKenzie, Councillor Berridge, Councillor Bishop, Councillor Williams, Councillor Boglari, Councillor Tolte. Those against, Councillor Hughes. Item 20.3, also an application for sponsorship. A mover and seconder, thanks. Move Councillor McKenzie, seconded Councillor Edwards. Those in favour? Those against? That's unanimous. Thank you. Item 20.4, mover and seconder, thanks. Move Councillor Mitchell, seconded Councillor Edwards. Those in favour? Those against? Sorry, ladies online, I know I'm going fast. Could I just double check you're in favour? Could you just show your hands again, thanks? Yeah, okay. So those...
Thank you, in favour.
It's carried, thank you. So those in favour... Councillor Mitchell, Golay, Hewlett, Edwards, McKenzie, Berridge. Oh, it's unanimous. Sorry, you didn't vote before. Sorry, that's a unanimous decision after all that. Thank you. You had your hand down. With